strain? Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still in love, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McGrilly and Jamie Lane in the Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. Stop the clock, we're done, we're rolling. Sound the horn and sing that we are going. 27 hours, that is the time. So let's hop on the bus and let it shine, 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 shine. Say sha la 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 la, 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 sha la 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 la. Good evening, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. We are back. It's a new week, a new set of shows. It is Friday night. That can mean only one thing, folks. You know what it means at this stage. For those of you who follow the Bandido Talks channel, Friday night's live stream means it's a little bit of let's reflect. We're going to do some reflecting tonight. On our Thursday upload, of course, the Bandido had some trouble with YouTube this week. The Bandido tried to get his normal Tuesday upload, which was a best bits upload, featuring highlights from last week's show. He tried to get it uploaded on a Tuesday. He then tried to get it uploaded on a Wednesday. But YouTube was having none of it. Now, apparently, and this was news to the Bandido, you are supposed to do a one-time verification. You have to take a picture of yourself. You have to take a video of yourself. And apparently this unlocks a whole bunch of new features, like allowing you to upload multiple times throughout a day. Now, of course, the Bandido was doing a bit of uploading of his YouTube shorts. And apparently, I had reached my maximum allocated amount of uploads on Tuesday and Wednesday, and so the Bandido could not upload his Best Bits episode until Thursday. Take your problems up with YouTube. If you're unhappy about this service from the Bandido, you need to write to YouTube and say, why is YouTube asking the Bandido that he needs a one-time verification to unlock these features? Write to YouTube and tell them. Give them a piece of your mind and say the Bandido couldn't get his stuff done. Despicable. Unbelievable. So anyway, our best bits compilation. It was uploaded on Thursday, last night. We did get there in the end, of course. So we're going to be diving into Thursday's best bits upload. Of course, we normally upload on a Tuesday. But the Bandido had to adapt. He had to adapt. His speciality is adaptation. So adapt he did. So we're going to go down through our Thursday upload, our best bits episode. Of course, it is episode 25 tonight. And episode 25, Morals of Life. It's going to be a very deep show tonight. The morals of life. Of course, it'll be based off some of our stories from our best bits compilation. We have 2 stories in particular we're going to get into, but more of that in a few minutes. Just a few updates, folks, before we get into all of that. This Tuesday coming, so let me see what date that is. You know, I should know this before I start, but I just tend to hop on to the live stream. Sometimes there isn't a lot of preparation. In fact, there really is never much preparation from the Bandido. He jumps onto his live stream and starts blabbering. And he doesn't even know the date. Let's see. So the date that I'm looking for, what is it? Next Tuesday is the 16th of December. So next Tuesday, the 16th of December, mark it down in your diary, folks, because we have our second guest episode coming next Tuesday, the 16th of December. It will be aired as a premiere. Of course, we've already had our first guest episode, Mr. David Feeney, talking retail from Desi's Casual Clothing. We actually did an episode last Saturday reviewing that particular interview. I think that was episode 23, The Personal Touch. Check out the episode if you're interested. Of course, you can check out our first guest interview with Mr. David Feeney. That is on the Bandido Talks channel. But this Tuesday coming, Tuesday the 16th of December, we have our second. It looks like I'm giving you the fingers, but I'm not. Maybe I should do this. It's our second guest episode here on the channel. Now, of course, I'm not going to give too much away, but all I am going to say is our guest for this particular episode. He is an entrepreneur. He is a results consultant. He helps businesses go through the gears, go through the levels. I'm going to say no more. If you are interested in business, if you want to understand the principles, the foundations of business, then you may be interested in this Tuesday's guest and in this Tuesday's guest episode. So, I would encourage you, Tuesday the 16th of December, live here, it'll be as a premiere, a live premiere. Of course, the interview's already pre-recorded, but a live premiere, 7 p.m. this Tuesday, the 16th of December, our second guest episode. You know what? I actually like this. It's our second guest episode. And you can interpret that particular gesture in 2 different ways. But anyway, so that's this Tuesday the 16th. Tune in for that, folks. Really good interview. I think you'll find it very useful indeed, very insightful. Our guest is full of golden nuggets with respect to business. He's an entrepreneur. He's a results consultant. Lots of wisdom distilled into 60 minutes. I would encourage you to check in with our episode this Tuesday. 7 p.m. Irish time here on YouTube. It will be a live premiere. Okay, so that's the big news. That's the big news. Of course, we were meant to have a Monday special this week, but the Bandido was away. Life got on the road. Things had to be done. We couldn't get that done. But we're back for our normal running order this week. And of course, folks, if you do like our little Let's Reflect segment here on a Friday, then feel free to give the stream a thumbs up. Your charity is welcome. All likes are welcome. Of course, if you are joining us live here on the stream, I always encourage you folks To get into the live chat, we will of course check the live chat at the end of the show, go down through your comments and all the things that you're writing there, relevant or not. We will go down through all of our live chats, see what you guys are saying about the show. If you are watching, of course, this particular episode, after the live event, get down into the comments section. You can let me know your thoughts on everything we talk about this evening. And finally, folks, if you enjoy what we do here on the channel, if you find it useful, insightful, valuable, interesting in some way, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. We do, of course, every week, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have a live show. 7 p.m. here on YouTube. That's 7 p.m. Irish time. So you always have 3 live shows. Then, of course, every Tuesday, we have an upload. It could be a best bits compilation, highlights from the previous week's shows, or it could be a guest interview. This Tuesday, it will be a guest interview. And then we do have our little YouTube shorts throughout the week. And if the Bandido can get his finger out of his hole and play some music, there will be some original music coming your direction as well. Bandido sings. I'm sure you can't wait for that. But anyway, lots of content coming your direction here on the channel. So if you like what we do, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And so with all of that said, folks, let us get into tonight's show. As I've already said, it is episode 25, Morals of Life. And because it is Friday, and because it is a Let's Reflect segment, we will be reflecting on our upload yesterday, last night. It should have been uploaded on Tuesday. YouTube, one-time verification. Now you might say, why don't you not just give YouTube the one-time verification? Well, YouTube said that if you have patience, all of these features will be unlocked eventually when you build up enough channel history. And so the Bandido has 2 options. Option 1 is submit a video, a picture, some way to verify yourself, or to just wait until enough channel history builds and the features get unlocked anyway. And you know, I like to be patient. I don't like to be hasty. I don't like to be needy for anything. And so the Bandido thought, you know what? Most people probably just say, you know what? I'm going to take the picture. I'm going to take the video. I'm going to submit this as evidence to verify me. And then I will instantly get access to all of these extra features. But you see, the Bandido likes to be patient. He likes to delay his gratification. He doesn't want to be needy to get things. And so the Bandido thought, you know what? Screw you and your verification. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until I patiently build up the channel history. I believe after tonight's show, this will be the 100th video on the channel, so we'll continue to build our channel history, and then in good time we will unlock these extra features. But we do not need to be needy or desperate, and we do not need to be submitting things that we are essentially, we don't need to submit something to acquire something that we are going to get anyway if we just have a little bit of patience. So anyway, slight diversion. But tonight's show, it's going to be based off our Best Bits show. Now, if you haven't seen that upload, that's fine. I'm going to briefly go over the particular stories that will be relevant to tonight's show. Best Bits, of course, those video uploads that we do, they are essentially a highlight compilation. Compilation of highlights from the previous week's shows. And the 2 stories that I'm going to focus on tonight for our little reflection and for our particular episode about morals of life. Story number 1. So let's just do a little recap of these 2 stories. So the first story that we're going to look at tonight is, of course, concerning Mr. Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, and Angela Rayner. Sorry, I made a mistake again, folks. I made this mistake last week. I said Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, and Angela Rayner. And you may be thinking, where is the mistake? You have pronounced all of the names correctly. These are real people. Where is the mistake, Mr. Bandido? Well, let me tell you where the mistake is. I said Keir Starmer. And you know damn well what I should have said. I should have said Sir Keir Starmer. Lord Almighty. Such an oversight. Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, and Angela Rayner. That was one of our stories last week. Now you may be thinking, what was the deal? What was the deal with that particular story? Well, what we were talking about was this whole idea that Sir Keir, he said that despite Angela Rayner, for all of you who have perhaps forgotten who this lady is, she used to be the Deputy Prime Minister and the Housing Secretary. And of course, this September, what happened? It came to light that Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister to Sir Keir Starmer, and of course, the Housing Secretary, it turned out that in September of this year, a big scandal broke loose. What was the scandal? Well, Angela Rayner didn't pay stamp duty on her flat in Hove. Now, stamp duty, it's interesting the names that they give to these particular offences. Stamp duty, of course, is another way for saying tax. So let's not be confused here, folks. Angela Rayner, she didn't pay stamp duty. Well, what she really didn't pay was she didn't pay tax on her own property. And here she is, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Housing Secretary did not pay tax on her own flat in Hove. And of course, this broke loose in September, and there was a public outcry, as there always is when these things happen. And so, what happened? Well, Sir Keir, he saw all of this unfolding, and so what did he do? He turned to his ethics advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus. So Sir Keir turns to Sir Laurie and says, Sir Laurie, what is the ethical thing to do here? What's the morally correct thing to do in this situation? I have my Deputy Prime Minister and my Housing Secretary has been caught not paying tax on her property, her flat in Hove. And Sir Laurie Magnus, of course, being the ethics advisor to Sir Keir Starmer, said, well, Angela breached the ministerial code. And so Angela had to resign in September. And so we thought that was the end of Angela. But oh no, it turns out that in the last week, Sir Keir has had a change of heart. And Sir Laurie Magnus, his ethics advisor, must also have had a change of heart, because Angela is now back in the cabinet. She's back in government again. And so that was the story. We were talking about this last week on our Sunday episode. And that was the gist of it. Angela resigns in September because she wasn't paying tax. You know, tax, that thing that the regular citizen has to pay. They are legally obliged to pay it. Well, the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary in September was caught not paying tax. Stamp duty, as it's called. And so she resigned, and the story we were talking about on Sunday's show was about how Keir called Angela the greatest social mobility story the country has seen. And in she goes back into government again. And now she's back in government, despite breaching the ministerial code. So that was the first story. And that's one of the stories we're going to look at tonight. What's the second story we're going to deal with tonight from our Best Bits upload? Well, you may think these stories are unrelated, because they're quite different. But they are related. Trust me, folks, they are related. Have faith in the Bandido. So our second story that we're going to deal with tonight on our Let's Reflect segment, Morals of Life, episode 25. Our second story from our Best Bits compilation was about Taylor Swift. Now, Taylor Swift, says you. Why Taylor Swift? Well, of course, last week we had a little story. It wasn't even about Taylor Swift, but Taylor Swift was sort of related to the story. So we had this lady called Luana Lopes Lara. I think that's her name. I hope that's her name. Oh, Luana. So Luana became the youngest ever female self-made billionaire, taking that position from none other than Taylor Swift. So this is how Taylor Swift got into last week's show. We were talking about Luana. Luana has become the youngest ever female self-made billionaire, and she has knocked Taylor Swift off the top podium. Because up until that point, Taylor Swift was the youngest ever female self-made billionaire. So, Taylor Swift. Last week, we talked a little bit about Taylor Swift's singing. Singing, in inverted commas. Now, why do I say that? Because it turns out that there is a YouTube channel called Wings of Pegasus. He does these vocal analysis videos where he uses his pitch monitoring software in his studio in order to see if the singers that we pay to go and see their concerts, essentially. All of these famous singers, these famous bands, we pay money to go and see them live. And Wings of Pegasus, Phil from Wings of Pegasus, what he will do is he will run the live performances, previous live performances from different singers and different bands through his pitch monitoring software in his studio, and he will then work out if the singers are actually singing live without pitch correction, without auto-tune, and of course, not miming. So, whenever Phil from Wings of Pegasus does one of these analysis videos, believe it or not, folks, it's actually rare nowadays, in 2025, for a singer, male or female, to sing live without one of those three things: auto-tune, pitch correction, or miming to a backing track. Now, Taylor Swift, how does she come into this equation? Well, it turns out that Taylor Swift, during her Eras tour, remember that tour, folks? The one that made billions? That one. The $1 billion Eras tour. Well, Taylor, whenever Phil started to do some analysis videos of Taylor's live singing, it turns out that Taylor, not only when she sings does her voice have an enormous amount of auto-tune and pitch correction, but for large segments of the concert, she's miming and shaking her hole on stage as she dances and mimes, and probably laughs at everybody who bought a ticket to her concert. So this is where Taylor comes in. Taylor is allegedly the biggest pop star on the planet, the greatest singer-songwriter of her generation. One has argued on her behalf. Many people have said that. Just a phenomenal, genius songwriter, a brilliant performer and singer. But it turns out that Taylor likes a bit of the old auto-tune, a bit of the old pitch correction. And better still, she likes a bit of the old miming as well. Now, what do these two stories have in common? Well, tonight's show, Morals of Life. Here we have two stories. One is about Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, Angela Rayner, and this idea that Angela Rayner as the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary a few months ago was not paying tax on her property in Hove. And here we have Taylor Swift singing on stage in front of crowds who have paid a lot of money to see her, but she's not really singing. She's miming, and when she does sing, her voice is very manipulated. It's pitch corrected and it has auto-tune. So basically, it is a robotic version of her true voice. In other words, it's not really her voice. It's a processed garbage version of what a human voice should be when it's singing live. So these two stories, what do they have in common? What links these two stories together? Well, morals of life, folks. These two stories bring into question the morals of the people at the center of the stories. So let's take the first one. Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, and Angela Rayner. So here are the regular citizens of watching Bandido Talks. You, fellow citizen, you have obligations as a citizen. You have to pay tax. That is one of your other obligations. And so, in principle, you may not be too pissed off about the fact that you have to pay a tax. Let's say you're one of those people. Let's say you're one of those people who says, you know what, I don't mind paying tax if the money actually goes back into my own area, into my own country, and it's actually being used to benefit me, my community, and the country as a whole. Let's say you're one of those people. Okay. So in principle, let's say you're one of those people who does not mind paying tax. You would be probably in the minority, but let's say you are one of those people. So you don't mind the idea of paying tax so long as it is a fair, level playing field. Meaning what? Well, you don't mind paying tax so long as everybody else is playing by the same rules that you are playing by. So you, in theory, in principle, you won't mind paying tax so long as your other citizens are paying their fair share, and so long as your government officials are also paying their fair share. Now, what happens when a story like the one relating to Angela Rayner breaks into the public sphere? Well, if you were one of those people who didn't mind paying tax because, you know, it's a level playing field, everybody else is doing it, so I don't mind making my contribution. If you're one of those people, but then you find out that the Deputy Prime Minister hasn't been playing by the same rules as you, how are you going to feel? Do you feel that it is morally correct that the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary should be not paying tax on her property? She then resigns for a few months, and then all of a sudden she's welcomed back into government with open arms by the Prime Minister himself, declaring that Angela Rayner is the greatest social mobility story the country has seen. She is greeted back into the government like a hero by the Prime Minister himself. Now, if you were one of those people who didn't mind paying a bit of tax because you thought, no, it's fair enough that I pay my bit because everybody else is playing by the same rules. But when you find this out, you may then ask the question and say, what moral kind of compass do the people in government have? Because they say that we are legally obliged to pay our tax, and that if we don't, we're going to get into trouble, because that would be called avoiding tax. You're going to end up in court, in other words. And then you look at the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary. She has a few months off. She has to resign. The ethics advisor to Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, says yes, she breached the ministerial code. She must resign. So she resigns. And then a few months later, she's back in the government again. So one could make the argument that there are some questionable moral compasses in the government. That argument could be made by that particular individual who initially didn't mind paying tax in principle, but now he's saying that, let's just say, his goodwill is being exploited. Here he is paying all of his tax, slogging away, trying to make ends meet. And he looks at someone who is in government, in a very prominent position in government, and they themselves have not paid tax. They had a few months off, they resign and have a few months off, and back into government they go. So we could definitely say that if you were one of those people who didn't mind paying tax because you thought you were contributing to the greater good, so long as everybody else is playing by the same rules, fellow citizen or government official, you may be pissed off. Now, of course, if you're one of those people who thinks tax is a load of bollocks, then you will be extremely pissed off at this finding. And you will be very much highlighting the lack of moral integrity among those in government. That would be, perhaps we could say, the opinion from someone who doesn't agree with paying tax at all. So either way, whether you're one of these people who doesn't mind paying tax, so long as everybody's playing by the same rules, or you're one of these people who loathes paying tax because you feel like the money is misused and that you're being exploited and being given the illusion that the money is going back into your country and community when it's actually maybe going somewhere else, to an ally perhaps, an ally who may need some military assistance for a particular activity that may be happening at the present time. So anyway, it doesn't matter what type of individual you are. You will see what has happened with Angela Rayner. You will see how she did not pay her tax. And she marches back into government again, despite the public outcry. So, okay, we can say then that some questionable morals. It is almost as if the fellow citizen or fellow citizens are being held to one standard while other individuals are held to a different standard. And this can create a sense of irritation among the public because they are seeing some questionable ethics, some questionable moral decisions that are being made. Okay, what about Taylor? Well, it's something similar when you think about it. Here you have Taylor Swift, a billionaire, greatest singer-songwriter of her generation, some people would say. And people would try to convince you that she's just so magnificent and that people are always trying to take credit away from her and that people should just acknowledge her brilliance. Well, that's a little difficult to do when, as a singer, Taylor Swift, singer-songwriter. So one part of this equation is to be a singer. It's an important part of the puzzle here. So she's a singer, a songwriter. So one would like to think that when Taylor Swift takes to the stage in front of 60,000, 70,000 fans who have travelled to that stadium, who have spent their hard-earned cash, which is being taxed, and they've paid for accommodation, they've paid for the ticket. Of course, concert tickets these days aren't exactly cheap. So when you go to all that hassle as a fan, you would think that the very least you would receive in return for all of your effort, all of your expense, would be a live performance. You would expect to get some live singing. Fair enough. Live singing, not put through some process like auto-tune or pitch correction, and you definitely don't want to be in the stadium watching someone mime. I think that would be fair to say. When you go to all of this hassle, when you pay all of this money to go and see a singer, you would expect that, given the nature of their occupation, a singer is supposed to sing. You would expect that the singer will take to the stage and they will give you a raw, representative version of their voice in that moment. That's the whole point of live music. You get a unique performance every night. Some nights it's a little different. Other nights it's really good. Maybe other nights not so good. That's the beauty of singing live. There's a certain unpredictability. It may be the greatest performance. It may be the most unique performance. It could be bad. But you have this spectrum. And to be quite honest with you, regardless of where the actual performance falls on the spectrum, what the fan and what the music audience really wants is just an authentic representation of where that singer is there and then in that particular concert. So I think it's fair to say that when you go to the trouble as a fan to purchase a ticket, sort out accommodation, get your travel sorted, make your way to the stadium for this live performance, you would expect that if you're going to see a singer, that you're going to get some live, raw, unfiltered, unprocessed singing. That seems reasonable. Now, what about old Taylor? Well, you see, with old Taylor, one could say there's a bit of deception going on. Just a little bit of deception. Because Taylor Swift is supposed to be one of the great singer-songwriters of her generation. Yet she takes to the stage with auto-tune on her voice, pitch correction on her voice, and for certain segments of the performance, she's miming. So she scores a magnificent 3 out of 3, 100%. Auto-tune, pitch correction, and miming. So again, tonight's episode, the morals of life. One could say this is morally questionable on the side of Taylor Swift, because Taylor Swift knows fine well that when she takes to the stage, she has rehearsed, she knows exactly what is happening with her microphone. She knows exactly what effect is going to be put on her microphone. And she knows damn well it's very consciously enacted that she's going to go out on the stage and mime for parts of this concert. And she has not given her fans a disclosure. She hasn't said to her fans, oh, by the way, folks, I'm not going to be singing live for part of this concert because I'm going to be too busy shaking my arse, and getting into my costumes and putting on a big dramatic show. So just bear that in mind, folks. I'm going to be miming. And she also doesn't say, oh, and by the way as well, when I actually am singing, I'm going to have some heavy processing on my voice because I can't really sing very well in pitch. So I need pitch correction and auto-tune to make sure that whenever I hit all of my bum notes, they don't sound so bad. That's the disclosure. Swifties. Of course, Taylor Swift does not do this. She gets up on the stage, shakes her hole, mimes into the microphone, and when she does sing live, she's got pitch-corrected vocals and auto-tune applied to her vocals. In other words, outright deception. And if I were a fan of a musical artist and I decided for some reason to go to a concert to watch them live, and I found out that they were miming, they were pitch corrected, or they had auto-tune on their voice, they're fucked. I'm never going near their concert again, and I would lose a huge amount of respect for that artist. Because the whole point of a live show is to give a unique performance in the moment. To not have any heavy processing in the form of auto-tune or pitch correction. Let your natural voice. If you are a generational great like Taylor Swift, why do you have auto-tune on your voice? Why do you have pitch corrected vocals? Why are you miming? If you're one of the greats of your generation. That sounds like a whole bunch of crutches to me. For someone who has questionable ability, one could say. So anyway, what do these two stories have in common? Well, what the two stories have in common, and this is what we are reflecting on tonight, the moral compass of different humans, the morals of life. So tonight's show, the morals of life. This is the thing, folks. There is not a universal morality. Every individual on this planet has a unique personality, and as a result of that unique personality, there are varying degrees of distortion that come from this personality. And then, of course, when we couple that with the informational inputs from the environment that is then coming into that mind and into that personality, everybody has, to varying degrees, certain distortions in their worldview. You cannot eliminate distortion. Everybody has it. But what you can do is, of course, you can reduce your level of distortion. How do you reduce your level of distortion in your worldview? You acquire accurate new information that is representative of the facts of reality. But this is the thing. Everybody, by virtue of being human and by virtue of having a personality, every human has a personality. And depending on your mixture of personality traits, some people are going to have inherently more distortion than others. So if you've got a very wacky looking personality, you're super open, you're super conscientious, you're very extroverted, you are super disagreeable, and you have high emotional instability. If you've got a wacky personality where you're out at the extremes of all of these personality traits, well then you are going to have more distortion relative to someone who has personality traits closer to the center. In other words, people who have personality traits that are more centered, they don't go out to the extremes of the spectrum. Those people, one could argue, actually have fewer distortions compared to the people who have personality traits that lie out at the extremes. The more extreme you lie on a particular spectrum for a particular trait, the more inherent distortion there will be in your worldview. And so why am I saying this? And of course, this isn't the only thing that causes distortion. As I've said, everybody, by virtue of having a personality, has some degree of distortion. And again, depending on the mixture of the personality traits and where you lie on the spectrum of each personality trait, are you closer to the center or are you lying out at the extremes? Depending on where you lie and the mixture of these traits, you're going to have some degree of distortion. Some people have higher distortion as a result of their personality traits being mixed together in this soup, and some people have lower inherent distortion because they have more centered personality. They're more centered on the spectrum of personality traits. That's fine. But as I've also said, your informational inputs, if you've got shitty information that's inaccurate and not precise and doesn't represent reality, then that is also going to cause you to generate distortion on top of the distortion that is generated by your baseline genetic personality. So the point of why I'm saying this, I'm using this word distortion. Distortion is what is going to cause this variability that we see in, quote, morality. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because when we are looking at different people, when we are looking at Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, Angela Rayner, that whole debacle, when we look at Taylor Swift, we could say, from our own perspective, well, that's not moral, what they are doing. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not right that Taylor Swift doesn't put a disclosure to her fans saying, look, when you go to my show tonight, I am not going to be singing live for certain parts of the show. When you go to my show tonight, I am going to use pitch correction. I am going to use auto-tune. So I'm just letting you know in advance, Swiftie fans, that that's what you're getting tonight. Of course, Taylor Swift doesn't do that. And so that's a morally questionable decision that she's taking. Because essentially, it's a little bit like scamming fans. The fans are coming to the concert thinking that they are getting a live performance, but in reality, they are being tricked. They are being deceived. And so we could say that it's actually a bit of a scam. Because she's not really singing. She's miming, and when she does sing, it's this robotic, auto-tuned, garbage voice that comes through the microphone. It's not authentic. It's not real, raw, authentic singing. So we could say that's morally questionable. Why would she do that? Why would she lie to her fans? Same with Angela Rayner. Here we are, regular citizens. We have to pay tax. We are obliged to pay tax. And if we don't, there are repercussions for not doing that. But here we have Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, Housing Secretary in September. Oh, whoopsie doopsie. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't pay tax on my property. Oh, gee, gosh. I must have overlooked that. Sorry about that. Did I breach the ministerial code? I did. Oh, jeez. Sorry, just give me a few months off there and kind of let the story cool down, and sure, I'll come back into government again with a hero's welcome from the Prime Minister. And of course, you may be looking at that and saying, well, that's very questionable in a moral sense as well. Here she breaks the law. And what does she get? A few months off, and she's back in again. And it's like it never happened. And she's actually been greeted as a hero. The greatest social mobility story the country has seen. In the words of Sir Keir. And so this is the thing. There is not a universal morality. We all have personalities that are unique to us. And if you have a personality, that means you are going to be generating some distortion from that personality. And then secondary to that, wherever you are getting your information from, that can also create added distortion in your worldview. And so what can happen whenever you have increasing layers of distortion? Well, one of the things that can happen is what you define as moral might be different to what somebody else defines as moral. In other words, what is moral is subjective, because each person, and I say person, look at this, the Bandido slurring his words. You'd swear he's drunk, but he's not, I assure you. But each person would essentially have their own version of what is moral and what isn't moral. Some people are religious, and so some people derive their morality from their holy book, whether it's the Bible, the Quran. What's the book that the Jewish people use? I can't remember what it's called, but there are a whole bunch of religious books out there. Depending if you're a Christian, if you're from Islam, if you're Jewish, whatever it is. Everyone has a book, a religious book, or all these faiths, religions, they have their book. And in that book, there are these set guidelines, there are these moral principles, there are these rules for how to live a moral existence. And so some people get their moral guidance from those sources. Of course, there are other people in the world, and we know them as murderers, and stealers, robbers. These people clearly operate under different guidelines for what is moral. So if you are dealing with a murderer, or a robber, a thief, well, clearly in the mind of that individual, they must think that it's justifiable, whatever it is that they're doing. Hence why they do it. So they also have a different view of what's morally right and what isn't. You may be watching this and you would say, I would never murder anyone. I would never steal. I would never scam anyone. I always pay my tax. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Well, that's fine. You have your own personality. You have your own varying degrees of distortion based on that personality and based on the informational inputs that you get from your environment, from the news, from the internet, from people in your local area, from your friends, from your family, from your workplace. And that's fine. But what I'm saying here is that morality, in a sense, it is subjective because everybody has their own interpretation of what is acceptable morally and what isn't. So, for example, you've heard me, the Bandido, has always talked about this idea that if the Bandido was a multi-billionaire, he would not be donating any of his money to humanitarian causes like world hunger or save the species or climate change. And someone might say to me, Billie Eilish might say to me, that's not morally right. You should donate large amounts of your money to humanitarian causes. And the Bandido would reply and say, no thank you. I'm going to use the money for me, to better my own existence and to better the existence of the people who are closest to me. I don't give a fiddlers about these grandiose humanitarian causes. No interest to me. And so some people would say, well, that's not morally right. You should be looking to try and help other people as much as you can. And you see, this is the thing. The old Bandido has his own morality, you could say. I have my own various distortions. I have my own informational inputs. I have my own personality. And so the way I go about my existence is based off my informational inputs and my personality. And so what I deem as moral might be different to what somebody else deems as moral. Now, we look at someone like Taylor Swift or Angela Rayner or Sir Keir Starmer. Of course, recently what happened with the recent budget? Remember, Sir Keir said that his party would not raise taxes. Remember that, folks? What happened recently in the budget? Up go taxes. You have to pay more in tax. Even though he said he would not do that. Oh, but times are tough. And we have to make adjustments. So up go taxes. And again, people would say, well, that's not right. That's not fair. Why have you not consulted your ethics advisor, Sir Keir? Because that's not fair. And of course, Keir's ethics advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, he must think this is great. He must think it's very ethical to keep hiking up taxes. He must think it's very ethical to keep printing money. He must think it's ethical and morally right that the economy is inflated. And see, this is the thing. Morality is subjective. Now, of course, people would say, well, there are certain things that should never take place in society. like stealing and murder and these kinds of things. And of course, nobody's in disagreement with that. But you see, in reality, as I've already said, every individual is unique. They are unique in their personality. Now, people like to say that personality, we have this whole nature versus nurture. Of course, people think that your personality can be molded by the environment. Now, there would be other people that say, personality is not molded by the environment. Personality is genetic. You are born with a personality. That is your personality. And there's no amount of environmental influences are going to change your baseline personality. Now, of course, environment can influence your behavior. That's a different thing. Changing your genetic personality is different to changing your behavior. The environment and the environmental inputs that go into your nervous system, they can of course alter your behavior, but it doesn't fundamentally alter your baseline genetic personality. That's what another group of people would say. So, in this case, let's say personality is genetic. Well, if your personality is genetic, that means you are going to have inherent distortion as a result of your genetic personality. And of course, that distortion is going to mean that you see the world slightly differently to somebody else who has a different personality. And that's normal and natural. If someone has a super disagreeable streak in their personality, so if you have someone who is super disagreeable, then that person is going to feel as if they are entitled to more slices of the pizza than other people. So if there are 3 people around a table and there are 12 slices of pizza, the quote moral fair thing to do, one could say, is each person gets 4 slices of pizza. There are 12 slices of pizza, there are 3 people around the table. The quote moral correct thing to do is you get 4 slices, you get 4 slices, and you get 4 slices. But of course, you see, if one of these people at the table is a severe narcissist, extremely disagreeable, they will think that they are actually entitled to 6 slices of pizza. Because in their mind, they think that perhaps they are more valuable humans than the other 2. They will feel as if they are due, they are owed more in this interaction. And why would they think that? They think that because they are inherently disagreeable. They have a disagreeable streak running through their personality. And so what does that disagreeable streak create? It creates its own version of distortion. In other words, that disagreeable person, instead of being, quote, fair and doing the morally right thing, which is 4 slices of pizza each, the disagreeable schmuck thinks he should get at least 6 slices of pizza. At least. Because in his mind, he feels that for whatever reason, the world owes him more than what he's actually due. He feels as if he is more valuable than the other 2 individuals that are involved in this particular situation. And so this is the thing. It's important to know this, folks. Why is it important to know it? Because when we look at people like Taylor Swift, deceiving her own fans that have turned up at her concert, thinking that they are getting a live performance, and they aren't. They are being deceived. They are being hoodwinked. When we look at Taylor Swift doing that, when we look at Angela Rayner and that whole situation with respect to her not paying tax, but not really incurring any significant cost for breaching the ministerial code. Yeah, she resigned, but she's back in government now. Everybody's forgotten about what has happened. On with business. Business as usual. And so we look at these people, and it's tempting to think, well, why would people go on like this? Why would people be so morally questionable in their decision making and their actions? It's bizarre to look at. If you don't know what you're looking at, you would be confused. You would think, how could certain humans be so shitty? Well, this is why, folks. Morality really is very, very subjective. It's very subjective because each individual is a unique human with a unique personality. And when you have a personality, you're going to have a mixture of various personality traits. We call them openness, we call them conscientiousness, we call them introversion, extroversion, we call them disagreeableness or agreeableness, we call them emotional stability or neuroticism. There are all these different personality traits. And depending on the way your personality traits mix in your own personality, and depending on how extreme or centered each of these traits are, this is going to give rise to varying degrees of distortion in how it is that you see the world. And as I've said, if you're one of these people who has a real disagreeable streak in your personality, so let's say you're super disagreeable, you will feel just naturally from your personality that you are owed more from the world than what you actually are due. And so this is sometimes what you see with these people. You see disagreeable people, or you see people with other personality traits that essentially come together to make their personality. And they create this unique individual with their own unique distortion. And it is this distortion in combination with the informational inputs that are coming from their environment, from the news, from the internet, from the people around them, friends, family, trading partners. When you bring this all together, the raw personality and the distortion that comes from the raw personality and those informational inputs and the distortion that can come from these informational inputs, because not all information is equal. Some information is high quality and it's accurate. Other information is a load of shit and it's not accurate. And so when you bring this all together, you can see that different individuals will have different degrees of distortion. And it is effectively this distortion that gives rise to the varying moral compasses that we see within the population. And it helps us make sense of when we see people like Taylor Swift literally deceiving their audience. We think, how could she get up on stage and do this? How could she get up on stage? Look, I sing, I play music. And for me, I could not, in good faith, get up on the stage and mime or sing with pitch correction or sing with auto-tune. I couldn't do that. I would feel too disgusted at myself. I would feel a lack of, almost you could say, I could feel my own self-respect dwindling if I were to do something like that. I'd feel like I was a fraud. And so as a result, when I go out to sing or play live, it doesn't matter how shit my vocals are. It doesn't matter how shitty my musicianship is in general. I would much rather give a authentic vocal performance or musical performance over some deceptive garbage. Something that Taylor Swift would do in her concerts. It's the same with Angela Rayner. I mean, the audacity. Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary. I mean, you couldn't write it. So you have the Housing Secretary and the Deputy Prime Minister isn't paying tax on her own property, on her own flat in Hove. It is laughable. And again, you would look at that. And again, if it was me, if I were in that position, and here I am, Housing Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, to me, the possibility that I could get caught not paying tax when I would be in that position would be enough to deter me from doing that. Because I would look at that and go, no, that is so hypocritical. Me, as housing secretary, taking tax from the public, and I, myself, I don't pay tax. So again, could I stand up there as the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, not pay tax on my own property while raising taxes for the rest of the population? Of course. This is the thing. The moral compass, the Bandido's moral compass, would be unable to do that. Because again, it's nothing to do with anybody else per se. Of course, there would be the reputational damage if I get caught, as I've already said. But the bigger thing here is actually the internal disgust that I would have at myself. The sheer hypocrisy. The sheer deception. So I would be unable to do what Taylor Swift is doing, and I would be unable to do what Angela Rayner did. And the rest. Sir Laurie Magnus, Sir Keir Starmer. But you see, this is the thing. I have my own unique personality. I have my own unique blend of the personality traits that I've already outlined. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, introversion, extroversion, disagreeableness, agreeableness, emotional stability / neuroticism, whatever way you want to put it. Those personality traits. And of course, we can break those down into subcategories. But I'm just giving you a few examples. I have my own unique blend of those personality traits. And some of my personality traits lie further towards the extreme than others. Some of them are more centered. But I have my own unique blend. And it is this unique blend that gives me my own unique worldview. And within that unique worldview, I have a certain amount of distortion. It's natural and it's normal. Your personality will give rise to a certain amount of distortion. Now, what do I try to do? What I try to do is get accurate information. Because accurate information is the anecdote. It is the way to reduce your overall distortion. You can never eliminate distortion from your worldview, but you can reduce it to a level whereby you're actually seeing the world as accurately as you can see it, given your own personality limitations. And so that's what I do. I understand that my natural personality and the distortions that come from my natural personality will, to some degree, contaminate my worldview. It will mean that I don't see the world completely objectively. There will always be a certain amount of subjectiveness in my own worldview. But the way for me to see the world as accurately as possible is to get high quality new information into the scone. Because the more high quality and accurate information I can get in here, the more I can reduce the distortion in my worldview. And whenever you have little distortion, because you're always going to have some, but when you have little distortion, that means you're going to have a higher probability of making more accurate decisions in your day-to-day existence. Less distortion means more increased probability of accurate decision making. And what does accurate decision making lead to? A more effective life's existence. It means that you are more effective in your life. It means you make more positive decisions, decisions that are beneficial to your own existence, than decisions that are actually costly. The more distortion that you have in your worldview, you tend to make more errors, more mistakes, more costly decisions that cost you more. And so this is the thing. These people, Taylor Swift, Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, Angela Rayner, they all have their own unique personalities. And within their own unique personalities, they have a unique blend of personality traits. So as a baseline, they already have some degree of distortion. Now, their informational inputs, depending on the quality of them, could lead to either reduced distortion or increased distortion. And so as a result, when you put these things together, this is where you see different moral approaches from different people. Because why is there not a universal morality across the planet? Why does everybody not just think the same? That's the question we need to ask here. The episode is called The Morals of Life. There are no morals of life, really, because every person has a unique personality, which means they have unique distortion. And every person is going to be subjected to some sort of informational inputs from friends, from family, from work colleagues, from the internet, from the television, from the radio. And so as a result, every individual is going to be carrying variable degrees of distortion in their worldview. And so this is why you don't see a universal morality across the planet. This is why everybody doesn't act and behave the same. Why is there so much diversity within human behavior? Why do we get some people who are interested in music, some people who are interested in engineering? Why do we get some people who commit crime, who murder, who steal, who rob other people? Why do we get other people who will literally put themselves second so that they can help other people? Why is there such a diversity among humans? And why is the moral approach of each human across the planet distinct? Why is there not a universal behavior pattern in humans? Why does everybody not just act the same? Why does everybody not just have the, quote, same moral compass? Well, the reason why is because everyone has a unique personality. Unique personality leads to unique distortion. Depending on your blend of personality traits, you could have more or less distortion than the person next to you. And then when we add into this equation the quality of the informational inputs from the news, from the radio, from the internet, from friends, from family, from work colleagues, we then get this mixture. This unique mixture from person to person. And this mixture is a combination of the raw genetic personality and the informational inputs. And when you put them both together, you're going to get a unique blend of distortion. And depending on how much distortion is in the system, you are going to see varying behavior patterns among humans. And in this, you're going to see various different versions of what one would deem to have, or what one would deem to be a moral compass, or the right moral compass. Because what one person says is morally right might be actually contradicted by someone else's opinion. Somebody else might say, no, what you're saying isn't morally correct. Because I think to do the morally right thing, you should do X. But the other person thinks Y is morally acceptable. And then we have to ask ourselves, why is there such a diversity? Why does this exist? And that's why. Personality is unique. Each unique personality generates its own unique distortion. Throw in the informational inputs, and we've got this unique hodgepodge of distortion. And that's why we will see people like Taylor Swift literally get up onto stage and deceive her audience. And then literally get her fans to argue on her behalf and claim that she is singing live. She doesn't use pitch correction or auto-tune. She doesn't mime. She will literally get her fans to do the dirty work for her when she is actually deceiving them all along. Why would somebody do this? How could someone look themselves in the mirror? See him with Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Laurie Magnus, Angela Rayner. How do they look themselves in the mirror? Well, they operate under a different degree of distortion. They have different personalities. They have their own unique worldview. As a result of this distortion, they have their own unique informational input that they are consuming within their own life. So as a result, you get all of this diversity in behavior and in morals. But anyway, that's an hour and 17 minutes. The Bandido's been rambling. Rambling. Everything looks like it's going according to plan on the stream. we seem to have been able to boot out the gremlins, which is always a good sign. Hopefully we have no gremlins. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to the live chat. We're going to have a look in the live chat. See what you guys are saying. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think personality is genetic? Do you think that you can change your personality via environmental influences? Are you nature or are you nurture? Do you agree with the concept of distortion? Do you think distortion that comes inherently from personality and that also comes from the quality of your informational inputs is what really decides the moral direction that one takes their life's existence? Let me know in the chat. Let's have a look and see. Let's have a look and see what you guys are saying. All right. So, who do we have in the chat? Live chat. Let's see. Well, we've got a few comments in the live chat. Let's have a look and see what you guys are saying. We'll go from the bottom up. So who do we have? We've got Mr. Connell McBride in the live chat. Connell has joined us live. It is a new person in the live chat. And the Bandido has a suspicion that he may actually personally know this individual. Is this a possibility? Let's have a look and see what Mr. McBride is saying. He says the following. El Bandido isn't giving to charity this year. He's giving Christmas cards. Well, it depends if Billie Eilish gets in contact with me, Mr. McBride. Because if Billie Eilish finds out, she may send her minions after me. And the Bandido doesn't want to get harassed by minions. But you see, the reality is, the Bandido has already confessed in previous episodes of this show that he is a bit of a selfish git. Now, I know some people may not like the sound of that. But you see, the Bandido is an individual who likes to preach individual excellence. In order to be useful to other people, I myself have to be in optimal circumstances in my own existence. And so this is the thing. Sometimes, when we hear people giving to charity, if other people want to give to charity, that's fine. I honestly do not care what other people do with their money, or their time, or their energy. But you see, for me, I like to make sure that first and foremost, number one is looked after. Because if I am not really taking good care of number one, then I am not going to be most effective in actually helping other people. How can I be most helpful if I myself am not in optimal circumstances? I'm actually, one could argue, doing a disservice to other people. Because if I am not in the best set of circumstances that I can be in my own existence, then I can't be of most help to other people. And so this is the reason why I say that if I had billions on the scale of, let's say, Elon Musk, because Billie Eilish was shooting some daggers at Elon Musk, and of course other wealthy people as well. And Billie thinks, in her opinion, her own subjective opinion, that people who have a certain amount of money should be donating to certain causes that Billie thinks are important. Now, what have we just talked about tonight, folks? We've just talked about everybody has their own degree of distortion in their worldview. And Billie Eilish is no different. But you see, the funny thing is, Billie Eilish is out preaching. She's out preaching, trying to impose her worldview on other people. And this is why, whenever Connell says in the live chat, El Bandido isn't giving to charity this year, he's giving Christmas cards. Well, you see, the reason why El Bandido doesn't give to charity is because people like Billie Eilish, and there are other people too, they will impose their own worldview, or they will try to impose their worldview on other people. And the Bandido does not like when other people try to impose things on other people. And this is the thing. I take a very hardline stance on this. I want to preach. If I am going to preach something, it will not be an imposition of my worldview on someone else. What I will preach is individual excellence. Get yourself in shape. Get yourself in a condition or in a position in your existence where not only you're in physically good condition, because being in physically good condition is very important. If you're sick, if you're unwell, if you are extremely overweight, well then that's going to hinder your performance, no matter what it is that you're doing. So we need to be in good physical condition. That's one part of individual excellence. But we also, in addition to that, we want to be in optimal circumstances. Because if we are not, then how is it that we are going to most effectively help other people? And so that is the stance that I take. I want to ensure that I look after number one, first and foremost, and the people that number one most cares about. That is my responsibility. And you see, if everybody was to take this approach, looking after themselves and looking after their immediate friends and family, the people who they most care about, if everybody just started to do that by virtue of being a little more selfish, and instead of trying to give more than what you can actually afford, because this is the idea behind charity. We see someone like Billie Eilish, multi-millionaire Billie Eilish, or some of these other wealthy people who are preaching and saying you should be donating your millions. We should be more charitable. And to that I would say, easy for you to say. You probably have a fancy lawyer or accountant or financial advisor that allows you to give the impression that you're giving a large amount of money to a certain cause. But let's just say, we could speculate and say that perhaps this individual can, let's just say, house their money in a location where that money might be immune from certain things like tax. Is that ridiculous to say? That someone could give the impression that they are donating to charity, but what they are really doing is taking a big lump of their multi-million-dollar net worth and parking it somewhere, giving the illusion that they are donating to charity, when what they're really doing is putting their money in a location where it can't be touched, where it is immune from certain things like tax. Now that is speculation, of course, but you see, Billie Eilish's fans, or people like Billie Eilish, will hear what Billie Eilish is preaching, and they may then think, oh, well, Billie donates to charity, so I should be trying to give more than what I can afford, because that's the morally right thing to do. Billie said to do it. And you see, this is where the Bandido then comes in, and takes his hard stance on charity. And it's not that you can't donate. If you want to donate, I don't care. You can do whatever you want with your money and your time and your energy. But this is the thing. I'm going to give a counter to that. And my counter would be individual excellence. You look after number one first, because the better your circumstances are, financially, physically with your own health, then the better you will be able to help other people. It will naturally come, in other words. You will naturally be able to help people more when you are in better shape, physically and financially. If you are trying to give more than what you can afford, are you really being as helpful as you think? It may make you feel good in the moment. It may make you feel good to give a small donation. But this is the thing. If you're really serious about the cause, if you're really serious about it, then you should be highly motivated to get yourself into circumstances where you can be more effective, where you can be more helpful, where you can actually help that particular cause on a greater scale. So anyway, Mr. McBride, the Bandido will not be giving to charity this year because he's too busy focusing on individual excellence and looking after number one and the people that number one cares about. And then by virtue of doing that, if other people were also to take this approach, looking after number one, by doing that, then as a collective group, everybody gets themselves into optimal circumstances. Everybody has a certain financial independence. Everybody is no longer just making ends meet. And so as a collective, we are then more effective if we are all in optimal circumstances and not sacrificing ourselves so that we can give to others, and it is essentially to our own detriment. The Bandido doesn't want to be doing things that is detrimental to him, first and foremost. So anyway, Christmas cards. I can't promise Christmas cards either, Mr. McBride. I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. And there is a distinct possibility that I would not keep that promise. Christmas cards have never been my thing. I understand the logic behind it. It's a gesture towards other people. Maybe I'm a bit Scrooge-like. Maybe I need to lighten up at this festive time of year. But the Bandido has no plans to write or send out any Christmas cards. But maybe if you provide a convincing argument in the chat, maybe he'll consider it. Anyway, let's have a look at our next chat. Who do we have? We have Quizzed22. Quizzed is back in the live chat. Let's see what Quizzed has to say. He says the following. So what you're saying is don't expect a Taylor Swift collab with the Bandido anytime soon? ? Well, you see, the Bandido has no problem running a collaboration with Taylor Swift. But we are going to have to set some ground rules for such potential collaboration. And one of those ground rules would be no auto-tune, no pitch correction, and no miming. So if we are going to do a live collaboration, Taylor is going to have to get on board with the Bandido's rules and regulations. So if Taylor Swift is out there and she is watching and she thinks, you know what? I fancy a bit of a collaboration with the Bandido. I've never heard him sing or play, but I fancy the collaboration. Well, you know what, Taylor? The invitation is open. But if you are going to use pitch correction or auto-tune or mime, then you can hit the highway. Maybe I'll hire you as a dancer. We'll take you on as a dancer. So we're not going to give you a microphone. That's the nature of the collab. So Quizzed, that's what I'm going to do. You know what? Because Taylor mightn't be happy with all of these rules and regulations. But from what I can gather, Taylor seems to like shaking her hole. So she shakes her hole a lot when she's up on stage. So maybe I can do the singing. The Bandido will do the singing. Because when the Bandido sings, you can be guaranteed there will be no pitch correction, there will be no auto-tune, there will be no mime. So what we will do is, the nature of this collaboration. This collaboration is going to involve Taylor Swift dancing and the Bandido singing. Because, you know, it goes back to the great Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan. He is one of the great movie makers of our time. He's the director behind Inception, The Dark Knight trilogy, Interstellar, Tenet, Oppenheimer, The Prestige, you name it. He has had blockbuster after blockbuster. Many successes. And Christopher Nolan, what does he say? Christopher Nolan says, do one thing and do it well. Do one thing and do it well. And what Christopher Nolan means by that is that Christopher Nolan never does two projects at once. He always does one project, and whenever that project is finished and he has done it in a way that he is satisfied with, he will then move on to the next project. So in other words, Christopher Nolan doesn't tend to do multiple projects at once because he wants to be able to pool all of his creative energy and ability into that one project. Give it all of his dedicated time and attention so that that project is as good as possible. And so, quizzed, what I would say is the Taylor Swift collaboration. We are not going to eliminate the possibility of having this particular collaboration. It's very much on the table. But you see, we're going to implement the Christopher Nolan approach. You see, I think what the mistake that Taylor is making, this is what I think. You see, why would you mime? One of the reasons that you would mime is that you are a shit singer. Okay. So you're a shit singer. Another reason that you might mime is because you are moving around on the stage so much that you are actually not stable. And it's very difficult when you're out of breath and you're moving around a lot on stage to then take the microphone and sing. So I think the problem that old Taylor's having here is she's trying to shake her hole and sing at the same time. And so what I'm going to say to Taylor is, Taylor, don't worry. You can shake your hole and focus on shaking your hole well. And then while you're doing that up on stage, I will take care of the singing. So I will be the vocalist and I will pool all of my energy into delivering an excellent vocal performance. Minus the pitch correction, minus the auto-tune, with no miming. And then Taylor, you can focus on your one job. Shake your hole and entertain the audience. And I think that would make an effective collaboration. Because it means now we are taking the Christopher Nolan approach. We do one thing and we do it well. We don't try to do multiple things at once. Taylor, you don't need to try and dance and sing at the same time. That's what the Bandido's here for. So I think quizzed, the collab, the ball is in Taylor's court. Those are the ground rules. Taylor will be here to dance. The Bandido will be here to sing. We will have a beautiful blend of entertainment. It will be authentic and will mean that neither of us are going to be overly distracted on having to do multiple things at once. So anyway, Taylor, if you're listening to this, the collaboration is welcome. I'm ready when you're ready. Ball's in your court. All right. Let's have a look. Who else is in the chat? I'm trying to look at the name. It looks like we've got a new name here as well. We have got Jernman. Jernman is in the chat. I have not seen this name before, so we have a new individual in our live chat, along with Mr. Connell McBride. So let's see what Jernman has to say about tonight's show. He says the following. A wise sailor once said, "Take what you can and give nothing back," with a compass emoji. Well, Jernman actually has put down a quote that I actually know. So I am almost sure that this quote is from a certain pirate lord in the Caribbean. So there is a pirate lord in the Caribbean. He's the captain of a famous ship. Legend has it, he is the captain of the Black Pearl. You may know who I am talking about. So there's a pirate lord in the Caribbean, captain of the Black Pearl. And this particular captain, I believe he goes by the name of Captain Jack Sparrow. Legend has it that Captain Jack said, "Take what you can and give nothing back." I believe that is a quote from the legendary Captain Jack Sparrow. If I'm wrong about that, you can correct me in the chat, but that sounds very familiar to me. Take what you can and give nothing back. Well, this particular statement does resonate with the Bandido. There's a bit of take what you can and give nothing back in the Bandido's approach to life. I would have to confess, I am, of course, a self-confessed selfish git. So when somebody puts in the chat, take what you can and give nothing back, that does resonate with the Bandido. And so, what is the essence of this particular quote from German? So German says a wise sailor. Now he says a wise sailor, but I think he's referring to Captain Jack, pirate lord of the Caribbean. Take what you can and give nothing back. Well, you see, I think this is another way for saying look after number one. So Mr. McBride said the Bandido isn't giving to charity this year. That would be correct. And he probably isn't going to give out any Christmas cards either. And as unpopular an opinion as this may be, the Bandido is very focused on himself. For the reasons that I've already explained, the more effective I am as an individual, the more competent I am, the more capable I am, the better circumstances that I can find myself in, the more useful I will naturally be to other people. And so, when you see a quote like this, take what you can and give nothing back, a lot of people will hear that. Billie Eilish will hear that and say, that's a disgusting quote. Morally, how could you live an existence like that? Taking what you can and giving nothing back. Well, you see, how do I interpret this? When we see a quote like this, and we see the end of the quote, give nothing back, people will say that you are selfish. If you adhere to such a principle of taking what you can and giving nothing back, people will generally say a selfish person would do that. But you see, the world is competitive. And some people do not like to accept the fact that the world is competitive. Everything that you do in your life is revolving around some competitive process. If you want to become friends with someone, there are other people who are vying for that friends or vying for that person's potential friendship. If you've got the hots for some gal, there are other dudes who also have the hots for that gal, and so there is competition for her romantic affection. Same with the friend. If you are going to seek for employment in the world, there are other people who are competing to try and obtain the same job that you are after. If you're trying to fulfill a niche in society, there are other people who are also going to be competing against you to try and fill that gap in the market and try to extract some benefit. So life is competitive. And so sometimes it is important in your life to take what you can and not give anything back. Because we always hear people say, you should always give back. And I understand what people mean by that. You should always give back. But you see, when I hear people say that, the first thing that I think is, give back to who? Who am I giving back to? Give back to who? So who am I giving my financial resources to? Who am I giving my time and energy to? Who? Give back to who? Oh, well, you should donate to this charity. And who am I donating to? Because, you see, charity is an interesting one. And I understand there will be local charities in your local area, and you will be able to see where the money goes to. Fair enough. If you want to donate money to such a cause and you feel confident that the money is actually going to be used correctly for the stated purpose, then fine. You can do whatever you want. The Bandido, though, is very skeptical of these charitable endeavours, because I think if we are honest about the world and the competitive, cutthroat nature of the world, charity is a funny thing, because when somebody says that you should give back, you should always ask yourself, give back to who? Because, let's face it, folks, if we are going to do anything, there has to be some benefit to us. Nobody does anything for nothing. And anybody who tells you that they are some altruistic Mother Teresa is full of shit. Everybody is doing something for some reason. For some personal gain in the moment, or for some potential gain in the future. Now, charity is notorious for virtue signalling. People will donate to charity so that they can give the impression to other people that they are just marvellous, outstanding humans. And so what they are trying to do is, they are trying to signal to other people, look how charitable I am. Look how kind I am. Look how nice a person I am. Are they really donating because they're really passionate about the cause that they are donating to? Or are they just donating because they want to give the impression out to the rest of the public that they are something that perhaps they are not? Because if they can successfully sell this image to the public by very visibly donating to certain charities, then they can essentially extract some benefit or gain in the future potentially from some of these onlooking people, because these onlooking people will look favourably upon this person who is donating. And so this is the thing. The Bandido is not in the business of virtue signalling. He's just not in that business. The Bandido is in the business of extracting as much out of what life can offer him as possible for his own benefit. And people are afraid to say this because they don't want to be labelled as selfish. They don't want to be labelled as not giving back to the rest of humanity, because there's a negative label associated with that. And you see, it comes back to German's comment from the wise sailor who says, take what you can and give nothing back. And you see, the reason why this particular quote is useful is because people themselves are so busy trying to give that they are literally, essentially handicapping themselves in order to give to other people. And to the Bandido's mind, this makes no sense. And I think people could perhaps do with a little bit more, take what you can, give nothing back. And even though it sounds selfish, when you actually think about it more broadly, it's not actually as selfish as you might think. Because as I've already said, if you are in some sort of a compromised state, your finances aren't good, your health is not good, your physical appearance is not good, your physical capabilities, you're not very resourceful, how the hell are you useful to anyone? And we've talked about this before. You see, the only way that you can be most useful to other people is to become ultra competent yourself. And to get yourself in optimal circumstances. Because you see, people put the cart before the horse. They're off donating to charity. They're off helping other people at the expense of themselves. And what do they end up doing? They end up handicapping themselves more and more and more. And so actually, they become less helpful to other people the more they continue to do this. To the point where they become useless. They are literally in a downward spiral towards being useless. Because they will not take personal responsibility for their own existence and trying to optimize their own existence. And this is where this is useful. If you can start to take what you can and not give anything back until you're in optimal circumstances, you will then find yourself in a position to actually be genuinely useful to other people. And so this is the thing. Captain Jack Sparrow, he takes what he can. He will always take what he can. And he won't always give back. But you see, that's the thing. Life is competitive. And if you do not accept the competitive reality of life, then you are living under some horrendous distortion. That's a bad kind of distortion to be living under. Because if you do not understand how competitive life is, then you will continue to sacrifice your own existence under some pie-in-the-sky idea that you're going to be able to help when you are actually not in optimal circumstances. Because you are literally being outcompeted. When you get outcompeted, you become less effective. Distance starts to be created between where you are now and your optimal status. And that's a problem if you actually want to be useful to other people. You want to close that gap between where you are now and your optimal set of circumstances. How do you do that? Well, you need to become more competitive. How do you become more competitive? Stop putting other people before you. Start focusing on yourself. Start taking what you can and stop giving so much back. Don't give so much back so that you're handicapping yourself. Because the more handicapped you are, the less useful you're going to be. So anyway, that's your man. Take what you can, give nothing back. Give nothing back. Don't be afraid to be selfish. It actually will stand to you in the long run. And it will actually stand to the people who surround you, the people you care about. The more competent you are, the more useful you are to other people. So, let's see. Have we got any more live chats? Let's have a look and see. We've got one more live chat. I think I've read these out in the wrong order. Oh dear. The Bandido will go from top to bottom the next time. He went from bottom to top. But we live and we learn. Let us see what our last live chat is for tonight's show. And it is from Connell McBride once again. Connell is getting active in the live chat tonight. Let's see what Connell has to say. This is the second comment from Connell. He says the following. Tell YouTube you've uploaded a load of videos of yourself to them already, Bandido. Well, you see, the Bandido could do this, but it goes back to what I said at the start of the show. Sometimes it's good to practice patience. I could send a message to YouTube. I could go and write an email and say, hold on, the Bandido has been active for 2 months. He has almost 100 videos uploaded. When am I going to unlock my features? But you see, this is the thing. The Bandido likes to not find himself in a needy state. And would it make the Bandido's life easier if these features were already unlocked? Yes, it would. But you see, having a little bit of patience, embracing the process, because the Bandido is not in a rush. Because the Bandido is not looking to conquer the YouTube space. He's not looking to, quote, go viral. He's not looking to try and get 100 squillion subscribers. He's not looking to get billions of views. The Bandido is looking to engage with the process of this project. And what is the idea behind this project? The project's ambitions or goals are to try and find the lessons in everyday media and everyday people who we may have on the show. And so these features that will be unlocked, more uploads throughout the day, being able to put hyperlinks in the descriptive box, being able to pin a comment, these types of features. The Bandido currently cannot gain access to these features. But you see, even though I don't have those features, they are not actually inhibiting the operation. We can continue to do what we're doing, and we don't have to be needy to unlock features that aren't actually critical to the successful operation of the channel. And sometimes it's nice to exercise some patience, because in today's world, with the internet, with our mobile phones, we are able to gain access to things so quickly. The world moves so quickly. Remember the Shawshank Redemption? What was the name of the old man? Brooks, who ends up hanging himself whenever he is released from the prison after many decades working in the library of the prison. He gets released out into public. He served his time. And what was it that Brooks said when he was now out as a, quote, free man? He said, you know, whenever he was put into Shawshank, the world was a different place. And when he exited Shawshank, he said something along the lines of, since when did the world go and get itself in such a damn hurry? When did the world go and get itself in such a damn hurry? And that's the thing. These days, people want things instantly. People want to satisfy their desires immediately. And we don't want to necessarily get into this habit where we expect to get things immediately, because that can lead to frustration and irritation and expectations being violated. And so what we want to do is, we want to remember that when we do anything, when we start any kind of project, in this case Bandido Talks, we don't need to get ourselves in such a damn hurry, to use Brooks's words. The channel functions perfectly well without these features. Would it be nice to have the features? Yes. But you know what? I actually like the fact that I have to work to get them. I actually like that. Because of course, I could take out my phone, okay? I could take out my phone and I could do whatever it is. What is it, a 30-second video to verify my account? I could do that. And I could get instant access to all of these additional features. But you see, if I were to do that, there's no work involved in that. I could have verified my account on the very first day of the channel, on the very first upload with the very first video. But you know what? I like the idea that I have to work for it. I'm going to have to diligently turn up every week, do 3 live shows, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, do an upload every Tuesday, a best bits compilation or a guest episode, upload all of the YouTube shorts throughout the week, maybe get a little bit of original music up. I like the fact that I have to work for the features because I think that's actually a good habit to get into. Because by me having to work and upload and stay consistent, despite the fact that we don't exactly have a lot of subscribers, we have 23 subscribers. One would say that is a measly amount of subscribers. But you see, this is the thing. You engage with the process and you make sure that you aren't trying to take any shortcuts. And because I know that my diligent effort by continuing to upload each week consistently, doing the show, will actually ultimately unlock these features, I actually don't have to send an email to YouTube. I don't have to send a message because number one, the features aren't critical to the successful operation of the channel. And then number two, there will be a greater sense of accomplishment whenever I eventually do unlock these features because I will feel as if I have worked for it. And there's nothing quite like the self-respect and the pride that comes from putting in diligent effort and time into something and then reaping the reward, no matter how small it is, whether it's simply just unlocking a few features through your diligent hard work. There's nothing quite like putting in the work and then getting the reward through this diligence, instead of just doing the quick thing, which is to do the instant verification and you get access to all of these features. Why not work for it? Why not exercise your patience? And why not just embrace the process and then reap the rewards of whatever the process is going to bring you along the journey? But anyway, I could tell YouTube, Mr. Conal McBride, but you know, we're going to deliberately work for this. We're going to force ourselves to work for these features. So let's see. Let's see if YouTube shall reward the Bandido anytime soon. But anyway, I think that those are all the live chats for tonight's show. Let me just do one more check. Sometimes I miss live chats because when I'm looking at them on my screen, they can sometimes disappear. But I think that's everything. So those are all the live chats. I do want to thank Conal McBride, Quizzed22, and German for getting into the live chat. We really appreciate your live, real-time interaction with the show. It always makes it more interesting when we have engagement. So I very much appreciate it. Thank you for getting in touch with the show and for letting us know what you think. And with that, folks, I think that draws tonight's show to a close. It's been a long one. The first time we've hit 2 hours on a stream. The Bandido has been just on a roll this evening. It was episode 25. Morals of Life. Again, if you enjoyed the stream tonight, folks, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Feel free to give it a like. If you're feeling charitable, if you feel like donating a like, all likes are happily received here on Bandido Talks. Again, if you are watching the show after the live event has been posted, get down into the comments section. Let me know what you thought about everything that we chatted about this evening. We had Conal McBride, we had Quiz22, we had German in the live chat. So get down into the comments, let me know what you thought. And of course, again, if you find what we do here at Bandido Talks useful, insightful, interesting or valuable, feel free to subscribe to the channel and get notified about any new live stream or any new upload that we are going to drop. And so with that, folks, that draws everything to a close. Remember, Tuesday, the 16th of December, we will have our second guest episode for you here on the channel. I will be plugging that throughout this week's shows. So put that in your diary, 7 p.m. Irish time, Tuesday the 16th of December, our second guest episode. And hopefully that has been your weekend off to a successful start. I think a successful start for the Bandido. We will of course be back tomorrow night for some news on the tube, 7 p.m. here on YouTube. That is 7 p.m. Irish time here on YouTube. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and all being well, I will get chatting to you all tomorrow evening here on YouTube for some news on the tube. And so with that, folks, it is over and out from the Bandido.